After 55, there is a silent trap that can steal your last years of peace. Do you know what it is? They don't tell you this way, but the world pressures you to keep performing, to keep buying, to maintain the pace of a life that no longer feels like yours. And the most painful part is that many remain trapped in that race, even in old age. Have you ever wondered how many times you bought something just to fill a void? Or how many times you kept accumulating, doing, running, when your whole being was asking you to stop? The truth is that the system we grew up in is not designed for you to rest. It is designed for you to keep producing, consuming, obeying. And if you don't decide to break away from it, old age can also become an invisible prison. Today I want to talk to you about something that goes against everything the modern world promotes. Slow living, simple living, life with a soul. Because yes, there is another way to live, a slower, wiser, more human way. And it is a path many discover late, when they have already spent too many years on the superficial. Don't skip ahead or rush through anything, because maybe a single phrase could free you from the weight you've been carrying for years, without realizing it. Are you ready to regain control of your time, your space, and your peace? If so, then let's begin with a short story, and we'll go into each important point in detail. In a forgotten corner of the mountains, where the wind blows slowly and the clock seems to have stopped ticking, there lived a man named Don Eladio. He was 78 years old and had a calmness that didn't seem of this world. Many in the village would see him walking by with his cloth cap, his slow step and his steady gaze, as if he carried an invisible map inside him. He was neither rich nor famous, but he was free, and that made him special. One day, a man from the city, an old acquaintance named Andres, returned to the village after retiring. He had spent 4 decades in the urban hustle, working, earning, buying, and now, with full pockets, he found himself with an empty soul. "Don Eladio," he said one morning while they drank coffee under the shade of an orange tree, "explain something to me. How is it that you, without having anything, live more peacefully than I do?" "Nothing," the old man replied with a half-smile. "I have more than I need, and less than what gets in the way." Andres didn't understand. Accustomed to noise, a packed schedule, the supermarket, the cell phone, the endless tasks, the idea that one could live without hurry seemed almost like an insult to his education. "And what do you do all day?" he insisted, almost desperately. "I don't know what to do with so much free time. I feel useless." Don Eladio let out a soft laugh, without mockery. "That's because they taught you that your worth lies in what you do, not in what you are. They trained you to run, to buy, to fill your days with things, until there was no room left for yourself in them." Andres lowered his gaze. Something about those words unsettled him, because they were true. "I also lived that way," continued Don Eladio. "I worked non-stop. I had a house bigger than I needed, full of things I didn't even remember buying. My schedule was packed, but my soul was empty. I realized it late, but not too late to change." "And what did you do?" asked Andres. "I sold almost everything. I moved to this small house. I stopped buying what I didn't need. I traded meetings for walks, noise for silence. It wasn't easy. I felt strange at first, as if the world had forgotten me, but in that forgetting, I found something I didn't expect. Peace." Andres looked at him in silence. It was the first time in years that someone wasn't talking to him about success, goals, or productivity, but about stillness. "And aren't you afraid of being alone?" he asked, with a sincerity that hurt to admit. "Sometimes. But I learned that there is a kind of loneliness that weighs you down, and another that frees you. This one, mine, is the kind that lets me listen to myself, Watch the birds. Feel the coffee steaming in the cup without having to rush it. It is another way of living, slower, more real, and yes, also happier. "And how do you start?" whispered Andres, almost like a child asking for a map. "You start by stopping the running, by no longer buying what you don't need, by no longer filling silences with screens, and by finally listening to that little voice inside you that's been asking you for years to stop." Don Eladio stood up with effort, touched his friend's shoulder and said, "You arrived just in time, Andres. You can still choose another path." That very day, Andres didn't buy anything. He didn't turn on the television. He didn't call anyone. He simply sat on the porch, watching the sunset behind the mountain, as if he were just beginning to understand the true value of being alive. And you, who are watching me now, maybe you too have long been feeling that restlessness, that sensation that you live running, but don't know where to. Give this video a like and subscribe, because now I will show you 9 lessons on how you can make the change, how to start living more slowly, without guilt, without fear, and with wisdom. Perhaps a single idea could free you more than you think. First lesson: reevaluate consumption. When we reach old age, we begin to look at life with different eyes. Priorities change. What once seemed important now simply takes up space, both mental and physical. A 68-year-old woman told me recently, "All my life I worked to fill my house with things, and now I just want to empty it so my soul can breathe." That phrase stayed with me, because it sums up something that many older adults begin to feel at this stage of life, that consumption was not the goal, only a distraction. That behind every accumulated object, there is a promise that was never fulfilled. I remember the case of Luis, a 74-year-old man I met at a recreation center for older people. In his youth, he worked tirelessly to buy a big house, furnish it with the best, have the latest car, and fill every corner with appliances, decorations, technology. In his words, "I wanted my family to know that I was someone." But as the years went by, the children left, the house grew silent, and most of those things just stayed there, untouched. "There are boxes I haven't opened in more than 20 years, he told me. "I bought a new blender, not remembering that I already had 2 stored away. I have more dishes than I will ever use in my whole life." One day, he got up and asked himself out loud, "What does all this give me now? Why do I keep carrying things I no longer need?" That moment was key. Luis understood that consumption had accompanied him for decades, like a shadow, that he bought out of habit, out of anxiety, to fill voids that cannot be filled with objects. And that story is not unique. It is the story of thousands of people over 60 or 70 who, when looking at their surroundings, realize that their house is full, but their spirit is not. That for years they chased things believing that was success, and that now they seek something else: lightness, peace, meaning. At this stage of old age, we realize that the weight is not only on the back or the knees, it is also on the soul. And part of that weight comes from excessive consumption. This is where Stoic thought can offer us clarity. Epictetus, one of the great sages, said, "It is not man who must adapt to things, but things to man, and if they do not serve him, he must let them go." In other words, if what you own does not give you freedom, then it is a burden. Have you stopped to look at your home lately? How many things do you have that you no longer use? How many purchases did you make just to feel a fleeting emotion? And how many times did you tell yourself, "Someday I'll use this"? But that day never came. Old age, if it gives us anything, is the possibility of taking stock, not with guilt but with wisdom, to ask ourselves, what serves me? What is too much? What space do I want to create for what truly matters? And no, this is not about strict minimalism. It's about purpose, about reclaiming your space to live in it, not just to store things. Luis, after that moment of clarity, slowly began to give things away, sell others, and get rid of what no longer spoke to his heart. He told me that for every box he took out of his house, he felt like he could breathe better. As if the dust also left my head, he said, laughing. Today his house is still the same, but it feels different, lighter, more serene, because it is no longer filled with the past, but open to the present. And here is a piece of advice. Start with a single drawer, just one. Take out what's inside. Look at each object and ask yourself, have I used this in the last year? Does it bring me joy, or does it just take up space? If the answer is no, let it go. Give it away. Hand it to someone who truly needs it. This is not just a physical cleansing, it's an emotional one. Because every object we let go of also frees a part of us that was tied to yesterday. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Simplicity is the result of profound inner clarity," and how right he was. Simplicity is not poverty, it is choice. It is saying, I no longer need to prove anything with what I own. I just want to live in peace. And I leave you with these questions. For you who are in this beautiful stage of maturity, how much of what you have truly belongs to you? And how much is possessing you? What emotional space would open in your life if you had fewer things to care for, clean, and organize? What would you do with that time, with that energy? Maybe go for more walks, or read, or listen to music in silence, or simply look out the window without feeling overwhelmed by clutter. Re-evaluating consumption is not about giving up what you enjoy. It's about realizing that you don't need as much as you once thought to be happy, that freedom is not in having more, but in letting go more. At this stage of life, we no longer have to run after everything. We can walk calmly, with purpose, with gratitude. And if you ever doubt, remember this metaphor: life is like a suitcase. At the beginning, we fill it with everything we think we need. But with the years, we understand that for the true journey, we only need the essentials, because what is light lets you move forward. Second lesson. The story of the narrow boat. Retirement is a moment that for many brings mixed feelings. On the one hand, there is the promise of rest, of being able to live without clocks or work obligations. On the other, there is the vertigo of freedom, because after so many years building a life full of habits, routines, and objects, leaving all that behind can be frightening. There are those who, upon retiring, feel they have lost their way. Without an office, without daily responsibilities, without a schedule pushing them, the emptiness appears, and that emptiness many times we try to fill with things: furniture, memories, appliances, accumulations that give us the false sense that we are accompanied. But not everyone follows that path. Some dare to let go, to start again, to live with less. I want to tell you the story of one of them. I met him in a small port in the south of the country. His name was Ernesto. He was 67 years old, and he had a calm smile that spoke of someone who had made peace with life. He invited me to have coffee on board his floating home, a 50-foot-long boat, barely 2 meters wide. "This is my whole world now," he said, as he pointed to the small cabin, the minimal kitchen, and a wooden table worn by the sun. Ernesto had worked his whole life as an accountant. He had a big house, 3 bedrooms, garage, basement, garden. His life was full of things. I had entire shelves of books I never read, tools I never used, clothes I hadn't worn in 10 years. I lived surrounded by objects that over time weighed me down more than they served me. Upon retiring, he felt he needed a radical change. He didn't want to spend his remaining years taking care of a house that was already too big for him. I realized that the house was like a padded cage, comfortable, but a cage nonetheless. So, against the advice of many, he sold the house. He bought an old boat and restored it little by little, and he had to make a decision, reduce his belongings by 90%. I could only take the essentials, everything else had to go. He confessed that the first days were difficult, taking boxes out of the attic, albums, ornaments, things from his children who no longer lived with him. There were moments when he doubted. I looked at an old coat and thought that someday I might need it. But then I thought, what if that someday never comes? How many things do we keep for a future that may never arrive? Each object he left behind, he said, was like dropping a brick he had been carrying on his back. I don't mean it poetically, I really felt it. I slept better, I breathed better, I lived better. And it wasn't about becoming an ascetic or living with the minimum out of obligation. It was a conscious decision to reduce the unnecessary in order to gain inner space. My soul needed space, not my shelves. Here lies a Stoic teaching that becomes especially clear in old age. The Stoics spoke of material detachment not as forced renunciation, but as chosen freedom. Epictetus said, "Do not say that you have lost something, say rather, you have returned it." That idea, properly understood, frees us. It reminds us that we are not what we have, that objects do not define us, that what is truly ours, what no one can take away, is what we cultivate inside: character, peace, purpose. And at this stage of life, isn't that precisely what we seek most? Peace, lightness, time for what is essential. I ask you, with a care, how many things do you keep just because they have always been there? How many objects accompany you out of habit, but no longer bring you joy? What burdens weigh more than they are worth? Perhaps the time has come to make space, not to fill it with other things, but to fill yourself with life. Ernesto gave me some simple but wise advice. Start with the easy stuff: a drawer, a box, a shelf. Don't think about everything you have to go through. Think only about that corner. Touch it. Look at it, ask yourself, do I need it? Does it serve me? Does it do me good? And he added something else. Not everything has to be thrown away. Some things have emotional value. Keep them, but do it with intention, not out of inertia. He also told me that he did something that helped him a lot. He gave things away, to his children, to neighbors, to people who truly needed them. Seeing how something I no longer used came back to life in other hands was a comfort. Today, he lives on his boat with few things: a couple of books, a radio, small framed photos, and in that reduced space he found a broader way of living. From here I see the sunrise every day. I hear the sound of the water at night. And every time I go out to sail, I feel that I carry just enough to be happy. Maybe not all of us can live on a boat, but we can all ask ourselves what we are accumulating and whether that helps us or limits us. Because many times it is not space that we lack, but air. Ernesto told me before we said goodbye, living with less didn't make me feel that I lost things. It made me remember who I am without them, and that at this age is an immense gift. I close this lesson with that image: a modest boat, gliding over calm waters, without excess weight, without excess, with only what is necessary, and inside a soul at peace that no longer needs to prove anything, nor cling to what once was. Because freedom, when lived in old age, does not come from having more. It comes from letting go enough so that the soul at last can breathe. Third lesson: simplify to heal. They say the home reflects the soul. And with the years, one begins to notice it. Physical disorder, those mountains of papers, drawers full of forgotten things, closets about to burst, are not just objects without a place. They are unresolved emotions. What we don't throw away, what we keep just in case, often has more to do with what we feel than with what we need. Once I met Clara, a 73-year-old, Woman who had lived in the same house for almost 5 decades. She had been widowed for 7 years, and her children no longer lived with her. One day she invited me for tea and to talk about how she felt the house was closing in on her. Not because of its size, but because of the invisible weight surrounding her. "Every corner reminds me of something," she told me. "But not everything it reminds me of does me good." She had accumulated objects, letters, gifts, furniture she no longer used. And each thing had its story, a broken frame that belonged to her husband, old clothes from her children that she didn't want to throw away, receipts kept for years without reason. "I'm afraid of throwing something away and regretting it later," she confessed, as if letting go meant forgetting, as if letting go were a betrayal. One day, without much announcement, she began to clean, not out of fashion nor impulse. She did it because she felt she needed air, that her soul, like the windows, closed for months, was asking for light and movement. She started with a box of papers she hadn't opened in more than 20 years. Inside were old recipes, unimportant letters, bills paid in '92. Throwing them away was hard, not because they were worth anything, but because, in doing so, she felt she was letting go of a past that had accompanied her for so long that it had already become part of her identity. But the curious thing was what happened next. After throwing away that box, she slept better that night. She felt that something had been unblocked inside her, as if that simple act of tidying had unclogged an emotional pipe that had been stuck for years. With every item she let go, she gained space, yes, but also lightness, not only on the shelves, but also in her chest. She told me, "I never thought that cleaning the house could be a way of healing, but with every drawer I empty, I feel like I'm letting go of a sorrow that no longer needs to stay." That is a truth not often spoken, but one that becomes evident in old age. Excess things are often a way of hiding what we don't want to face: grief, fear, nostalgia, even guilt. And here is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Simplicity is the result of profound inner clarity. It's not about living like a monk or throwing everything in the trash. It's about asking ourselves what we are holding on to and why. Because it's not just clothes that we keep. We keep letters from people who are no longer here, out of fear of forgetting. We keep broken objects because throwing them away would be accepting that they will not return. We keep gifts from people who are no longer part of our lives, simply because it is hard to close cycles. So I ask you, with all respect, why is it so hard for you to let go? What are you keeping out of fear of facing what no longer is? How much of what you have around you do you really need? And how much is only a barrier between you and your peace?" Clara continued her cleaning for several weeks, not all the time. She went slowly, one box at a time. Sometimes she sat down, cried, remembered. She did not see it as an obligation, but as an act of kindness toward herself. One day, she showed me a corner of the dining room where there once had been a cabinet full of ornaments. Now there was only a plant and a lit candle. "It's my new space of calm," she said. "Before I had it full of things I didn't look at. Now it's where I breathe, where I think, where I pray." Simplifying is not impoverishing. On the contrary, it is allowing the essential to shine. And for that light to appear, sometimes you have to go through the pain of letting go, like when one prunes a plant so it can grow back stronger. It hurts a little, but the result is life. If you're thinking about doing this process, I'll leave you with some wise and simple tips I learned from Clara. Don't start with the hardest things. Begin with something neutral, a box of papers, a drawer of utensils. Build confidence. Do it in small stretches, an hour a day. You don't need to empty the whole house in a week. Talk to the objects. Yes, it sounds strange, but if something is hard to let go of, Look at it and thank it, then let it go. Sometimes we just need that symbolic closure. Not everything has to go in the trash. You can give away, donate, recycle. The important thing is that you find a destination that gives you peace. Do it with soft music, with a candle, lit calmly. It doesn't have to be a battle, it can be a ritual of renewal. And above all, do it with love, not with guilt. Don't judge yourself for having kept so much. We all do it. It's part of our story. But now you can write a new page, with less weight. Clara told me that after cleaning, she felt there was more space not only in her house, but also in her mind. She thought better, slept better, felt less tired, as if her body no longer had to carry so much past. In the end, simplifying is not just a matter of order. It is an act of freedom. It is allowing the air to come in. It is accepting that not everything has to stay forever. To close this lesson, I leave you with an image that stayed with me. Clara opening her window after days of rain. Outside, the fresh air. Inside, a house emptier, but more alive, as if, by letting go, she had begun to breathe again. Because that is what deep cleaning does. It gives us back our breath, the real one, the one that comes from the soul. Fourth lesson, recovering time. We live in a world that doesn't know how to stop. Everything is urgent. Everything is for yesterday. From the moment we open our eyes until we close them again at night, we are surrounded by clocks, notifications, reminders, lists of things to do. Modernity has filled us with tools that promise to make our lives easier. But sometimes I feel they only make it faster and emptier. We wake up and we're already running. Coffee in hand, television on, bad news before breakfast. The hours go by and we don't even know where they went. Has it ever happened to you that night arrives and you don't know what you actually did with the day? It's not laziness nor lack of intention. It's that the world's pace drags us along if we don't hit the brakes. And in old age, this becomes even more evident. We no longer have the energy we once had, but we do have something more valuable: perspective. We can look back and realize how many times we ran without knowing where to. How many times we said, "I don't have time," when in reality we were giving it away to things that didn't deserve it. I remember the case of Ernesto, a 68-year-old man who retired after working almost his whole life in a bank office. The first month of retirement he spent agitated. He woke up early, made lists, filled his schedule with errands and activities, as if he still needed to justify himself before an invisible boss. Until one day, his granddaughter asked him with total innocence, "Grandpa, when do you have time to play with me without looking at the clock?" That phrase, small but direct, made him stop in his tracks. Ernesto told me that very afternoon he turned off his phone, went out to the garden, and sat under the lemon tree. He spent 2 hours simply talking with his granddaughter, listening to her, playing with the leaves of the tree. He wasn't in a hurry. He had no duties. At the end of the afternoon, with the golden light of the sun lowering through the branches, he felt a peace he hadn't experienced since he was a child. He said to me, "It was like coming home after many years." Since then, Ernesto changed his way of living. He didn't stop doing things, but he chose to do them at a different pace. He no longer rushed. He began to walk more slowly, to read without hurry, to cook without recipes. He rediscovered that an afternoon can last forever if one is truly present. And that is something we often forget. Time is not measured only in minutes, but in attention. A distracted hour flies by, but an hour connected with what we are doing stretches out, fills with meaning. At this stage of life, after 60 or 70 years, time should no longer be filled with unnecessary commitments. It should be filled with presence, with silences, with moments in which we simply are, without the need to run. Stoic philosophy reminded us of this centuries ago. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have little time, but that we waste much. And he was right. We waste time worrying about things we cannot control. We spend it in empty arguments, in routines that don't nourish us, in distractions that only fill the noise of the day but not its soul. So I ask you, from the heart, how long has it been since you savored an afternoon without hurry? When was the last time you sat down to do nothing and felt good about it? What would you do if today you were given 2 free hours without interruptions? Would you fill them or simply live them? Time at this stage is no longer about productivity. It is about quality, about presence, about choosing with intention. And you don't need to make big changes to recover it. Sometimes small gestures are enough. Turn off the television during meals. Chew slowly. Look out the window. Put away the watch for a day. Do things when you feel it's the right moment, not when the schedule says so. Go for a walk without a fixed destination. Let your feet decide for you. Read a book just for the pleasure of reading, without hurry, without counting pages. Take time to talk with someone, without looking at the phone, without looking at the clock. These acts, which seem simple, are revolutionary in a world that pushes you to go fast all the time. They are ways of resisting, of reclaiming what is yours, your attention, your peace, your present. Ernesto now has a beautiful habit. Every Friday, he turns off his phone in the afternoon and goes for a walk around his neighborhood. Sometimes alone, sometimes with his granddaughter. He doesn't carry a watch. He doesn't wear headphones. He only listens to the sound of the wind, the birds, the footsteps on the sidewalk. He told me once, "Those walks don't change the world, but they change my day, and that's enough." Because well-lived time doesn't need to be extraordinary, it only needs to be authentic. The wisdom of old age lies in knowing that hurry is no longer a medal, that arriving fast doesn't always mean arriving better, that the best memories don't have a stopwatch. They have the smell of freshly brewed coffee, of warm bread, of calm conversation. And when one learns to savor that, time stops slipping away. To end this reflection, I want you to imagine this scene. A wooden bench under the shade of a tree, a steaming cup of tea in your hands, an open book on your lap. No urgent sounds, only the soft song of a bird or the wind through the leaves. No plans, no rush. Only you, the moment, and the certainty that you don't need anything else. That, dear friend, is time well lived, and the best part is, you don't have to wait for it. You can choose it today. Fifth lesson, fighting the temptation to buy. It's curious how, even after 60 or 70 years, we keep receiving the same message. Buy this and you'll be happy. Despite having decades of life, raising children, working, overcoming crises, and witnessing fashions and technologies come and go, advertising still speaks to us as if we still needed more. The shop, windows shine with things we never asked for. Ads reach us by mail, by phone, on television. They promise us youth, energy, security. They tell us that without this product or that service, we are incomplete, as if we were broken vessels that can only be filled with the latest thing someone wants to sell us. And of course, after so many years receiving the same message, it's normal that breaking that habit feels hard. I don't speak from theory. I know someone who lived this very closely. Marta, a 72-year-old woman, once confessed to me that she had a small ritual. Every afternoon, she would sit with her tablet and get lost in online stores. She didn't buy expensive things, but she bought many small ones. A purse, a scarf, a new organizer. Things that, according to her, gave her immediate joy. But after a year, her house was full of unopened packages, drawers crammed, shelves crowded with objects she didn't even remember ordering. One day, her granddaughter asked her why she had 5 almost identical tablecloths. Marta laughed and then stopped to think. She told me, "That's when I realized I wasn't buying out of need. I was buying out of impulse, like someone eating without hunger. And so her process began. Marta decided to do something she called her shopping fast, a month without buying anything that wasn't essential. At first it was difficult. She realized how many times she bought out of habit, not out of lack. But after a week she began to notice something. The anxiety went down. The house felt lighter. She herself felt freer. Why is it so hard for us not to buy? Because for years we were taught that having more means living better, that having something new is a symbol of success, that emptiness can be filled with things. And that idea, planted so deeply, doesn't disappear with intention alone. It disappears with awareness. This is where Stoic philosophy can enlighten us. Epictetus said, "No external thing has power over us, unless we give it to it." And this applies perfectly to consumption. It's not the object that controls us. It's our mind that makes it necessary. So I ask you, sincerely, that thing you're about to buy, do you really need it? Or is it an attempt to fill a deeper gap, something that can't be solved with a purchase? How many times have you bought out of boredom, loneliness, or habit? These questions aren't to judge you. They are to wake you up. Because in old age, the most valuable thing is not what enters the house, but what enters your soul. And this is not about living in deprivation, it's about choosing with intention, about not allowing the system of consumption to keep dictating your happiness. If you want to start freeing yourself from that trap, here are some practical and wise tips. Make a list of what you really need and promise yourself not to buy anything, not on that list, for a set period, a week, 15 days, whatever you can manage. When you feel the impulse to buy, wait 24 hours. The desire is usually fleeting. If the next day it still feels necessary, then consider it. Check your home before buying. Many times we already have a version of what we want. Why repeat? Fill your time in other ways. Many of us shop out of inertia or boredom. Read, walk, tidy up a drawer. Do something that nourishes you, not something that fills you with things. Share what you have. Give away what you don't use. Giving opens up space not only in your house, but also in your heart. Celebrate the days you don't buy. Write them down. Notice how good it feels to be the one who decides, not the impulse. Because every time you choose not to buy something you don't need, you are training your freedom. You are telling yourself, I don't need to fill my house to feel complete. I am already complete. Marta told me after her second month of fasting that she had started to feel her home again. Before, it was full of things, but I felt empty. Now that there's less, there's more. Of me, she explained, and that phrase stayed with me. Maybe that is the true wealth at this stage of life, feeling at peace with what you already have, not having to chase after the latest model, nor worrying about accumulating more, but looking around and recognizing that you are fine, that you are alive, that you are here, and that what really matters cannot be bought. I want to end this reflection with an image. Imagine walking down a quiet street. Your hands are empty. You carry no bags, no weight, no extra worries. The air is fresh, the sun warms your face, and you feel that at last you can breathe deeply. That lightness, that calm, is what a life free from unnecessary consumption offers you. Because the soul also needs space. And when the house is full of objects you don't need, the soul shrinks. But when you learn to say no thank you to what doesn't add, the soul expands. It breathes, it lives, and you, at this stage of your life, deserve to live like that. Light, present, and at peace. Sixth lesson. Filling the space with meaning. When we stop buying, when we dare to let go of what is unnecessary, something curious happens. Suddenly, there is more space, in the house, in the schedule, in the soul. But that space, if we don't fill it with something meaningful, can become an emptiness that hurts. Many older adults have felt it. after retirement, after seeing the children leave, after tidying the closets and donating what no longer serves. A strange silence arrives. The work routine is gone. Shopping is no longer the same as before. The calendar empties, and the house, which once seemed small, now seems a little bigger. And then one asks, and now what do I do with this time, with this space, with this life? It's not just about having less, it's about living with more purpose. Because when one stops consuming, it's not that one loses something, it's that one regains the opportunity to decide, what do I want to fill my days with now? I remember Don Ernesto, an old friend who was widowed at 68. His house, once full of laughter, visits, and family dinners, began to grow quieter. He sold the car, stopped buying clothes, and little by little let go of things he no longer used. But one day he confessed to me, I've gained space, but I don't know what to put there. I'm not talking about the closet, I'm talking about my days. That phrase stayed with me, because many of us have felt something similar. The system teaches you to fill your emptiness with objects. But when one stops doing that, one must face that inner space and ask, what truly nourishes me? Don Ernesto started with something simple. He got up every morning and went out for a walk. At first, just a few minutes, then half an hour. He greeted the trees, the neighbors, the dogs in the neighborhood. He began carrying a small notebook where he wrote down what he saw, a new nest, a flower he hadn't noticed, a phrase that crossed his mind. And without realizing it, his soul began to fill. One day he told me, do you know what I discovered? That walking without hurry, without shopping in mind, without things to do, is like cleaning the house inside. I return home different, lighter. That is the beauty of filling the space with meaning. It doesn't have to be grand or complicated, it just has to have significance for you. Something that connects you with yourself and reminds you that you are alive. The Stoics spoke a lot about purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, do not waste what remains of your life on speculations and useless things. For them, living with meaning meant choosing each action with intention, not just existing, but knowing why you do what you do. And that is worth more than ever in old age. Because if you don't fill your days with what does you good, the world will take care of filling them for you, with distractions, worries, shopping, soulless television. And that is the risk, living on autopilot. That's why today I want to invite you to calmly ask yourself these questions. What are you investing your hours in? That which you do every day. Does it nourish you or exhaust you? What would you like to take up again that you left behind for lack of time? What simple thing once made you happy and you've forgotten? You don't need to have all the answers today, but you do need to start looking inward, like someone cleaning a room and asking, what do I want to see here every day? Here I share with you some practical, simple but powerful ideas to fill your space with meaning. Create a small daily ritual. It could be drinking coffee in the garden, writing 3 lines every night, reading a few pages before bed. The important thing is that it is yours. Take up an old hobby. Maybe you like drawing, embroidering, tending plants. It doesn't matter if you think you no longer have talent. What matters is what you feel while doing it. Connect with others. You don't need large groups. A sincere phone call, a walk with a neighbor, an afternoon of cards with a friend is enough. Relationships are fertile soil for the soul. Learn something new, even if you are 70, 80, or 90 years old. The mind renews itself when it faces the unknown. It could be learning a language, using an app, cooking a new recipe. Write your memoirs. Not to publish, but to remember, to leave a piece of your story for those who will come, to honor your path, because what fills us is not consumption, it is connection. with what we do, with what we feel, with others. You don't need to fill your house with things. You only need to fill your days with meaning. And here is an image to close, one that may help you remember this lesson when you need it. Imagine that your soul is a small garden. For years, it was covered with boxes, bags, clutter, things you didn't need. But one day, you decided to make space, clean, let go. And now, that garden is ready. The sun enters, the air flows, and at last, you can plant what you choose. A book every afternoon, a shared laugh, a walk with no destination, a moment of gratitude. And then, without realizing it, the soul blossoms. Because when space is filled with love, with intention, with presence, life blossoms, without the need for adornments, only with what matters. Seventh lesson: connection with nature. As the years go by and modern life drags us with its artificial rhythm, there is something many of us have been losing without realizing it: our connection with the earth. The body feels it, the soul does too. But like everything in life, pain becomes normal if we carry it for too long. And yet, something inside us still remembers that we were made to feel the sun, to walk barefoot, to listen to the song of the wind through the trees. In old age, when priorities change and the noise of the world begins to tire us more than excite us, returning to the essential becomes a necessity. But we don't always know how to do it. A few years ago, I met Aurora, a 73-year-old woman who had spent most of her life in the city. She had always been active, restless, hard-working, but upon reaching retirement, something inside her dimmed. She had everything, but she couldn't find peace. One day she told me, "I feel as if I'm in a box all the time, even though I have plenty of space in my house." She didn't know how to explain it, but her soul was trapped. One day, almost without thinking, she accepted a friend's invitation to spend a week in the countryside. There was no internet, no television, only trees, sky, earth, and silence. At first it was difficult. She felt strange without schedules, without background noise, without screens. But on the second day, while walking at dawn along a path of damp earth, something inside her loosened. She stopped, she breathed, and she cried. Not out of sadness, but because she felt something old inside her awakening. It was as if my body was telling me, "Here you are well. Here you belong." Since then, Aurora goes out to the park every day. She plants flowers on her balcony. She puts her hands in the soil every week. And every time she does, she tells me, it's as if the soul breathes. And that is exactly what nature offers us. Not a magical solution, not a trend, but a return, a coming home. For years we have lived disconnected from the natural world. We got used to concrete, to artificial air, to landscapes seen through screens. But our body, which has evolved over thousands of years to the rhythm of rivers and seasons, never fully adapted. That's why in old age, when sensitivity sharpens and we begin to notice more of what once went unnoticed, this disconnection feels stronger. Nature doesn't cure everything, but it relieves much. Walking among trees reduces stress. Sitting in the sun improves mood. Touching the earth stimulates the immune system. Listening to a bird's song reminds us that life wasn't always noise and rush. All this is not poetry, it's science. And, more importantly, it's lived truth. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Nature has given us one mouth but two ears, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." That teaching goes beyond words. It's about listening to life, and life in its wisest form speaks softly. It speaks in the whisper of the leaves, in the murmur of water, in the silence of an afternoon outdoors. Old age is not an ending. It is a return to looking at the sky without hurry, a return to feeling the breeze as a gift, not just another detail. And that doesn't require money or great trips. It's enough to step into the garden, to take off your shoes in the grass, to look at the moon for a few minutes before sleeping. Ask yourself these questions, calmly and without judgment. How long has it been since you felt the wind without thinking of anything else? When was the last time you put your hands in the soil? How much of your life unfolds within walls? Could you give yourself a few minutes a day to return to the natural world? And if it's hard to begin, here are some simple but powerful tips. Go out into the sun at least once a day, even if only for a few minutes. Let the light touch your skin. Let the body remember what it is to be alive. Care for a plant. You don't need a garden. A pot on the window is enough. Watching something grow connects you with your own process of life. Walk outdoors with no destination. Don't do it to exercise. Do it to feel the world, to breathe with the soul. Listen, stop to hear the sounds that don't come from devices, the wind, the birds, the trees. They are the music of a life without rush. Let go of the clock. If you can, even for a little while each day, let time not be your master. Just be without measuring everything. Because in the end, being in contact with nature is not a pastime. It is a way of returning to ourselves. It is the language the body and the soul understand effortlessly. Close your eyes and think of this. A sunset without noise, just you, sitting on a bench under a tree. The sun descending slowly as if time knew there was no more rush. The wind caressing your face. And inside you, an ancient calm, as if something in you remembered that you belong to this world not for what you do, nor for what you buy, but for the simple fact of being alive. That is the image I want to leave you with today. The soul that after years of speed, of screens, of noise and consumption, returns to its natural home, to the essential, to the true, because as long as we breathe, we can always return. 8th lesson, health as a priority. For much of our adult life, we were taught to be useful, productive, present for everyone. We attended to children, to work, to social commitments, to other people's worries. And along the way, health, the personal, the intimate, the one that truly sustains everything, was left in the background. There was always something more urgent. There was always someone who seemed to need our time more than we did ourselves. But when we reach old age, that stage where supposedly we could finally take care of ourselves, rest and heal, we often carry the same habit, putting ourselves at the end of the list. How many times have we said, when I have time, I'll get that checkup, or I'll wait until it hurts more to see the doctor? And how many times have we accepted situations or people that drain our energy just to avoid discomfort, for fear of seeming selfish? I met Don Ernesto, a 68-year-old man, recently retired. For decades he worked as a mechanic and later as a workshop teacher, always helpful, always willing, always surrounded by people, but also always with a contracted back, with insomnia, with gastritis that came and went. He once confessed to me, "It wasn't so much my body that hurt, but my soul for not being able to say no." One day, after an especially heavy week helping several acquaintances with paperwork, favors, and other people's problems, his body said enough. A small collapse left him in bed for a few days. It wasn't serious, but it was a warning. He told me with slightly wet eyes, "I never took it seriously when my body asked me for rest. Now I understand it's not laziness, it's wisdom." From that moment on, Ernesto began to live more slowly. He woke up without an alarm clock. He went for walks, not out of obligation, but because the morning air gave him peace. He began saying no to what he couldn't carry, and yes to what truly did him good. He learned to eat without guilt, without rush, without screens. He rediscovered the pleasure of a short nap. He gave himself permission to take care of himself without feeling selfish. And perhaps for the first time, he began to feel alive again. Living slowly is not living less, it is living better. Our body, which we so often ignore, begins to speak more clearly with the years. It doesn't shout, but it insists, sometimes in the form of small aches, sometimes as fatigue that won't go away, sometimes as that feeling that something is not right, even if the tests come back normal. The body doesn't lie, but it requires us to listen, and to listen we must make silence. Slow down. Let go of the guilt of not being available to everyone. Understand that if we don't take care of ourselves, we won't be able to take care of anyone else. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said that one of the keys to peace was learning to distinguish between what depends on you and what doesn't. And health is one of those sacred territories where much depends on us. We can decide what we eat, when we rest, whom we listen to, with whom we share our energy. We can protect our body not only with medicine, but with boundaries. Because every well-said no is a yes to well-being. Ask yourself these questions calmly. Are you listening to what your body asks, or are you still postponing its voice? To whom are you giving more energy than you can sustain? How long has it been since you had a day without hurry, without demands, just to breathe? It's not about becoming a hermit. It's about wisdom. That wisdom gained with years that says, my peace and my health are not negotiable. Because a calm mind needs a body in balance. And a body in balance needs life to stop feeling like a race. Here are some simple but valuable tips. Sleep well. It's not just about how many hours, but how you experience them. Prepare your rest as if it were a sacred ritual. Darkness, silence, a cup of tea, no screens before bed, just you and the rest you deserve. Say no without guilt. You are not obliged to solve everyone's problems. Those who love you will understand, and those who don't shouldn't have so much space in your life. Eat mindfully, without guilt, without extreme diets. Eat calmly, savor. Food is also medicine if it is honored. Move at your own pace. You don't need to run marathons, but your body needs movement. Walk, stretch, dance if you can, not as punishment but for joy. Give yourself pauses, an afternoon reading, a while under the sun, a conversation without hurry. That too is health. And above all, treat your body like a temple, not like a machine. You are not here to produce, nor to answer messages at all hours, nor to please everyone. You are here to live, and living well begins with taking care of yourself. Think about this. If your body spoke today, what would it say to you? Would it thank you for listening, or would it beg you, please, to take care of it before it's too late? Imagine that body of yours, which has carried so much over the years, children, jobs, emotions, worries, joys, griefs, that body that always sustained you, even when you didn't take care of it. That body deserves respect, deserves rest, deserves affection. Close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself sitting by an open window. In your hands, a warm cup. Outside, the song of a bird. Inside, your calm breathing. There is nothing urgent, only you and the awareness of being alive. That is the image I want to leave you with. Ninth teaching, the legacy you leave. There is a silent concern that many older adults carry with more weight than they show. The idea that their value at the end of the road is measured by what they leave materially. A house, some money, maybe a piece of land. And if those things aren't there, they feel they have failed, that their passage through this life will not be remembered. This belief, deeply ingrained, hurts because it reduces an entire life of effort, love, decisions, sacrifices to a number in a bank account. But that is a lie society has told for years. And today, with the wisdom that only comes after 50, it is time to dismantle it. I met Doña Teresa some years ago. She was 83. She lived alone in a modest little house, full of plants and underlined books. When she spoke, she did so slowly, with a soft voice that seemed more interested in planting than impressing. She never had children, But she helped raise 4 nephews. Her pension was minimal, her clothes always the same. But the day she passed away, the funeral couldn't contain the people. People of all ages arrived with tears and smiles, remembering phrases she used to say, advice she offered, hugs she had given exactly when someone needed them. "She taught me that one never really leaves if they have loved well," said one of her nieces. Another remembered how Doña Teresa had taught her to write letters when her soul was broken. "She told me writing was leaving a mark without making noise." Doña Teresa left no material inheritance, but her legacy was immense. She left values, words, gestures, simple routines that others adopted as beacons for their own lives. Her way of living, discreet, conscious loving, became her true testament, and that no one can spend, divide, or lose. At this stage of life, when longer silences and slower days arrive, it is a good time to ask yourself, what do I want to leave when I'm no longer here? Not what I want others to inherit, but what I want them to remember. Legacy is not measured by what can be touched. It is measured by what is felt when you're gone, by the laughter you left planted, by the decisions you inspired, by the values you lived, even when no one was watching. Stoic philosophy spoke about this. For them, the only thing that truly belongs to us is our virtue, that is, how we live. Seneca said, "Life is long if it is lived with meaning," and that is key. What you build is not what is seen on the outside, but what you leave inside others. If you lived with honesty, if you were compassionate, if you learned to forgive and to guard your peace, then, even without riches, you leave something immense. And you, what teachings are you leaving? What phrases of yours will your grandchildren repeat? What decisions of yours will serve as an example for someone not yet born? Think for a moment. If today you had to write a letter with the 3 most important lessons of your life, what would you write? Who would you give it to? You don't need to write a book to leave a mark. But if you feel like it, writing memoirs can be a powerful gift. Not to magnify your achievements, but to share your learnings. You can tell how you fell and got back up, what mistakes you made, and what you learned from them. Those stories are what children, grandchildren, nephews, and friends need. Not your perfect successes, but your real paths. You can also leave rituals. Maybe every December you cooked something special, or you had a song you played when you were sad, or a particular way of looking at the sky in the afternoons. That is also inheritance. The small things that others will repeat when you're gone are a form of simple eternity. If you have grandchildren or children nearby, don't just talk to them about the past. Teach them how to look at the present. Take them for a walk with you. Tell them why you choose to live as you live. You don't need grand speeches, just an honest conversation in a low voice while the sun sets. And if you don't have direct family, that doesn't change anything. Your legacy can be broader. Maybe you help your neighbors, or you leave written words in notebooks that one day someone will find, or you share your story in a community center. All of that leaves a mark too. What matters is not that the whole world remembers you. It's enough that just one person lived better for having been close to you. And if today you feel that you haven't built that legacy yet, don't worry. It's never too late to start. Every day you live with awareness. Every gesture you make with love. Every piece of advice you give from experience. All of it adds up. Here are some simple ideas to start leaving your legacy. Tell your stories. Even if you think they're not important, someone needs to hear them. Pass on your principles. Speak of what you learned about patience. Honesty, gratitude, not as a sermon but as a heart-to-heart talk. Write something, a letter, a note, a small journal. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect. What's valuable is that it's yours. Be an example. If you live with serenity, others will want to understand how you did it. And that's where the true teaching begins. Do good, even in silence. Sometimes an invisible gesture changes someone's life. And when the time comes to leave, let your way of living speak for you. Let it not be things that define you, but the moments you helped build, the people you gave comfort to, the smiles you planted without asking for anything in return. Picture this. One day, someone stops under a tree and remembers something you said. Not your name, not your age, not your titles, just a phrase of yours, a piece of advice, a way of looking at the world. And in that instant, without knowing it, that person continues your legacy. That is leaving a mark. That is living forever, even when you're no longer here. After reviewing these 9 teachings, perhaps something inside you has stirred. Not because you didn't know them, but because many times we need someone to tell us, with calm, with respect, without hurry, as a good friend would, over a coffee in a quiet afternoon. At this stage of life, when we have already seen so much pass, the only thing that really starts to matter is what brings peace, what gives meaning, what makes each day feel like a gift and not a burden. Re-evaluating. Consumption is not about renouncing everything. It's about stopping the chase after what never fulfilled you. It's looking at your house, your things, your schedule, and asking yourself, does this do me good, or does it just distract me? Letting go of the unnecessary is more than cleaning. It's making space to breathe, to sleep better, to live lighter. Simplifying to heal is understanding that order outside helps create order inside, that every object that goes makes room in the soul. Recovering time is not about doing more things, but about doing fewer and enjoying them more. A walk, a book, a conversation without a clock. Resisting the temptation to buy is an act of power, of saying, I already have what I need, and discovering that this gives a freedom that cannot be sold. Filling space with meaning is asking yourself, if I'm no longer spending my energy buying, where do I want to invest it? And that's where another life begins. Reconnecting with nature is remembering that we come from the earth, that the body and soul are nourished by the sun, the air, the green, the natural silence. Making your health a priority is stopping the sacrifice for everything and everyone. It's eating calmly, sleeping without guilt, moving because you enjoy it, and leaving a legacy has nothing to do with leaving things. It has to do with how you lived, with what you taught without saying it, with what you planted, even if no one noticed. Look at all you have learned. Look at all you can still live, because it doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, or 80. As long as you're here, you are on time to let go of what weighs you down, on time to say no more, on time to return to yourself. Old age is not the end. It is a different stage, more serene, more truthful, and if you decide to live it with intention, it can be the best. Today, I invite you to keep one image, a lighter house, a body that breathes without urgency, a soul that doesn't accumulate more than it needs, and you, walking without rush, knowing you lack nothing. Because in the end, it's not about having more, it's about needing less and feeling more. Thank you for staying until here. If any of these ideas spoke to your heart, don't let them pass. Start with the simplest, a drawer you clean, an afternoon you savor, a conversation that is born without hurry. Sometimes a single decision is enough to change the pace of your life. If this message touched you, if at some point you felt we were speaking about you, then this channel is for you. I invite you to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss the next topics. Each video we make is meant to help you live with more clarity, more peace, and less noise. We are not here to entertain, we are here to awaken. If you got this far, it is because something inside you is ready to change, to simplify, to live more slowly, but with more meaning. I'd love to know who is walking this same path, so leave in the comments. The phrase, less things, more life, and tell me from where in the world you're listening. It is always a pleasure to read you. And if you know someone, a friend, a sibling, your partner, who needs to let go of burdens or reconnect with their peace, share this video with them, because sometimes a single word can light a spark. See you tomorrow, as always, with a new topic. Until then, take care of your body, your mind, and above all, your time, because it is the most valuable thing you have.